Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now in the Seadrift section to poem number 9 of the 11 of Seadrift, Song for All Seas, All Ships. Now it's interesting that the word song in a title has already been used 9 times. This is the 10th time so far. Only 3 more times in all Leaves of Grass will we find a song of, right? So that already makes this an interesting poem for us. Now the assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt. We started with inscriptions. We went all the way and up to including an intro set of comments on Seadrift, and then we just did Beach Alone. Let's hear what Norton's has to tell us about ships and some background information. This poem, first printed in the New York Daily Graphic, April 4th, 1873, under the title Sea Captains, Young or Old, was written in commemoration of 2 recent maritime or marine disasters. The British steamer Northfleet was sunk January the 22nd, 1873, in a collision off Dungas with a loss of 300, and the White Star steamer Atlantic was wrecked off Nova Scotia the 1st of April 1873 with a loss of 547 people. Under its present title, the poem appeared as one of the 4 sentinel songs of the 1876 Two Rivulets, and finally in the Seadrift group of 1881. Now, notice right away, this is a poem divided into 2 parts. We're going to actually ask it to be, what's up with dividing this poem into 2 parts? Can we see anything that's working there? Notice we will begin with today, hyphenated, a rude, brief recitative. Now, the word rude, you'll remember from starting from Palmanock, passage 1. Here by rude, he doesn't mean like insulting rude. What he means is that he's going to get to the point. He's not going to mince words. He's going to be very direct. Of course, with recitative, we're familiar with this operatic term, and we've seen it already in To Thee, O Cause, Salut Amant, passage 3, the Ox Tamer as well. And what is it that this recitative is going to now celebrate? Of ships sailing the seas, each with its special flag or ship signal. We've heard about flags already, especially go back to inscriptions. Of unnamed heroes in the ships. By the way, the only other use of the phrase unnamed heroes happens in To a Foiled European Revolutionary. Of unnamed heroes in the ships, of waves spreading and spreading far as the eye can reach. Notice again the use of the dash there, reminding us, of course, of our Emily Dickinson. Of dashing spray and the winds piping and blowing. We're going to see this present participle stuff happening a lot in the next poem as well. And out of these, a chant for the sailors of all nations, fitful like a surge. Now, this idea of all nations, we've said it before. This is Whitman's inclusivity. No question. He's going to celebrate not just American sailors, but all sailors, right? Notice fitful like a surge. In other words, there's movements. And here, of course, talking about the death of 2 different ships going down, the death of so many people. Of sea captains, young or old, and the mates. Of course, camarero is the phrase that was used earlier for mates. And of all intrepid sailors. We're going to celebrate this fearlessness, this intrepid fearlessness, this courage. Of the few, very choice, taciturn, that is to say, never wanting to celebrate self-quiet, whom fate can never surprise, nor death dismay. And then this will take us to T.S. Eliot's Dry Salvages 4. Picked sparingly without noise by thee, old ocean, chosen by thee. And then he'll speak directly to the sea. Thou sea that pickest and cullest the race in time. By the way, cullest the only time in all Leaves of Grass that word gets used. And unitest nations. Death, in other words, is the great uniter. Suckled by thee, old husky nurse. You'll remember from Beach Alone, previous poem, this use of the word husky. Embodying thee, indomitable, untamed as thee. And then in parenthetics, ever the heroes on water or on land, by ones or twos appearing, ever the stock preserved and never lost, though rare, enough for seed preserved. Again, the use of the word seed, obviously, leaves of grass. We've heard so much of this. And then a real brief second section, which now he's talked about what the sea has required, and now he's going to get to speak almost back to the sea. And this obviously will fit very much in this sea drift passage. Flaunt out, O sea. You'll remember flaunt is the first word of Song of Myself, passage 40. Flaunt out, O sea, your separate flags of nations. Notice the exclamation points here. Flaunt out, visible as ever, the various ship signals. But do you reserve especially for yourself and for the soul of man one flag above all the rest, a spiritual woven signal for all nations? We're back again to this notion for all intrepid. The uniter death is. Emblem of man, elate above death. This, of course, to elate, to make joy-filled or happy. Song of the Exposition, passage 6, he'll use this word elate, so for those of you who are like, there's an echo there. Token of all, in a little bit it's going to be pendant, token of all brave captains and all intrepid sailors and mates, we're back to the word intrepid, and all that went down doing their duty, sounding very much like our Immanuel Kant, reminiscent of them, twined from all intrepid captains, young or old. Again, twined, that idea of being together, being bound together, hugging, grasping, all of that. A pennant universal, subtly waving all time. The other use of subtly is by broad Potomac shore. Waving all time, or all brave sailors, all ships, all speed, all seas, all ships. Now, this special flag, what are we talking about? Well, obviously this is the celebration of the immortality of the soul. The idea that you might, we're back to Song of Myself, passage 6, right? You might be able to get these great sailors, these courageous sailors. See, you might get them, but you don't get them. In other words, it's John Donne's sonnet number 10, "Death Be Not Proud," right? To finish, obviously, to a death is the tie that brings us all together, that unites us, but only because for Whitman there is this spirit, the soul. We think, of course, of Plato's Phaedo that comes to mind. At 2b, I just want to point out the two sections and the way that there's almost like a, he says recitative, there almost seems to be this almost like a predicate, like back and forth that's being suggested here. In terms of 3a, guys, I have made this argument to you several times that I believe that you can't read T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets without having a real appreciation of Leaves of Grass. Let me just give you an example. Do you remember this passage 4 of Dry Salvages? Lady whose shrine stands on the promontory, pray for all those who are in ships, those whose business has to do with fish, and those concerned with every lawful traffic, and those who conduct them. Repeat a prayer also on behalf of women who have seen their sons or husbands setting forth and not returning. Filia del tu Ophelia, Queen of Heaven. Also pray for those who were in ships and ended their voyage on the sand, in the sea's lips, or in the dark throat, which will not reject them, or wherever cannot reach them the sound of the sea bells, perpetual Angelus. Now, we've given full lecture, of course, on this at learnstrong.net, but I just want to point out the ways in which I think Eliot's influenced by a set of lines like this. In other words, it's almost as if the sea seems to want to choose or pick certain young men sailors who are going to go down. Now, obviously, we think of the great Melville novel, Moby Dick of 1851. Finally, you'll remember that it was Hamlet who makes the argument to Claudius, right, at the conclusion of Act 4, that death is that great kind of unifier. It just kind of brings everything to its place. And we're obviously playing that game, which leads us now to 3b. How do you feel about the whole concept of death? Does the fear of death or the consideration of death take away possibly any love of living for you? How do you balance those things in your reading of maybe of Leaves of Grass? You'll be moved to have different perspectives. I certainly hope so. Thank you.